Hello and welcome along to another EFL Manager special from the Honest Football Podcast. We are catching up with a busy week of EFL managerial appointments. And next up is linked to our most recent one, which is Bradford appointing Derek Adams on a 3-year deal. That's to replace the outgoing joint managers, Mark Trueman and Collar Sellars, who had a great impact last winter, but it just started to dwindle towards the end of last season. And of course, the added twist is that Derek Adams left Morecambe, which we talked about in yesterday's episode, where they've now appointed Steve Robinson. So, Craig, as always, we will talk mainly about the new man here. But I think we've got to start by talking about the joint managers because they stepped up with no experience in a relegation battle with Bradford, surprisingly, last year. And although the goals and the points dried up in the last few weeks of the season, and you can perhaps understand the decision as a result, they did a fantastic job to get them well clear and even have them potentially talking about the playoffs at one point.
Yeah, it was always a risky move. I think we kind of said that in the manager special back in whenever they got appointed in January, I think it was, something like that. But it was a risky move, hiring two joint managers. Obviously, I've done youth football under 18 for Bradford. It was a risky move, and you have to give them credit in a way. They started well. They had that new manager bounce, like you love to say, the manager bounce. But as you said just now, the form just died. But I think they were well safe by the end of the season on 59 points. But the form is just, I think there's some decisions I think that could have, maybe naivety, I think, could have gone wrong. I just saw that Danny Rowe signed Danny Rowe in January, and they got rid of him in April. Whether that's a Danny Rowe decision, maybe personally. But for me, on the outside, it's totally baffling because we know what Danny Rowe is like. We watched him in that Wembley final for FC Fylde. I love to play. I think he's a fantastic striker. So to release him, but then after that, they didn't really score as well. They scored 2 in the last 7 games. Maybe they wanted someone in that's got a lot more experience manager-wise.
You said they might need an experienced man they have got. And a man who, less than 2 weeks ago, as we're recording this, was promoted from League Two in a playoff final. So I think it's fair to say he's got the pedigree and ticks the box of, I've done this before. So Derek Adams comes in, again, like the Morecambe appointment of Steve Robinson to replace him, a 3-year deal, which shows a commitment given the pandemic, given the financial situation a lot of EFL clubs are in. But before we go and talk about it, I know you had your views on him leaving Morecambe, but we'll leave those behind because we want to focus on the Bradford side. What are your initial reactions to Bradford appointing Derek Adams?
Surprising. Yeah. Surprising as he just left. He just took the team promoted to League One for the first time in their history. I don't want to speak about Morecambe too much, but obviously what a wonderful job he's done. What he's done there was incredible. No one ever expected Morecambe to be promoted. So you think he will carry on? Like I said in the Morecambe video, you think he'll carry on and go for it. And you don't lose your reputation because you're a made man in Morecambe. But it's to pursue new opportunities. I know Bradford's a big club, but I think it's more pressure on him now. There was no pressure on him at Morecambe. Bradford, big ground in that League Two, big support. I expect them now to really push him. From Bradford's point of view, I think it's all right. It's fine.
And it's quite interesting, actually, because I know he has taken a small side, reputation-wise, up in Morecambe last season, but he has also taken Plymouth up before and nearly got them in the playoffs after a poor start in his first season in League One. I know he left them in a difficult position there, but he's recovered his reputation at Morecambe. He did a great job at Ross County in a couple of stints before that. So he's definitely got the pedigree. We're agreed on that. But I think the problem is, as you say, he's put himself under such pressure now. Now, he's not the first manager to do it, and I'm sure others will succeed as he will. But it is an incredible situation to put yourself in because if he doesn't take them up now, there's going to be a lot of I told you so's around, aren't there?
Yeah, and that's why I couldn't understand the appointment. Well, the thing is, Bradford, the previous managers before that have been really good and they've been up there, and it just hasn't worked out. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I expect Bradford to do better, and they haven't recently. So to finish 15th in League Two is unacceptable, really, in my opinion, for them. Considering the teams that were in the playoffs and got promoted, like Cheltenham, for example. I know Cheltenham were up there last season, gone to the playoffs, but Bradford should be much higher, much higher. Or reputation-wise, they should be much higher. I don't want to say they were in the Premier League 20 years ago, but they were. So it's a fall from grace, regardless. So Bradford have to get it right. It has to work, and I think Derek Adams has to get off the ground running.
And I guess one of the things is, look, he has got a proven track record. He has done a great job in League Two last season. From a Bradford point of view, as you mentioned, wonderful stadium, big supporter base, some good players still left at the club. And you would imagine if we are having fans back in full capacity next season with the excitement of a manager that's just won promotion, maybe a slightly bigger budget as well, certainly a bigger one than he had at Morecambe. So, from a Bradford point of view, if he does get it right, and if he does produce the sort of team and the sort of form that he produced with Morecambe last year on a smaller budget, he's going to get the Bradford City fans right behind him, and they could become an unstoppable force with that.
Yeah, but it's about recruitment. I know there's been talk about he might raid his old club. I think the recruitment has to be very, very good in the summer. Has to be good. And it depends on, obviously, we know his style of play is probably a little bit direct with a little bit of counter. If he gets him off to a good start, better player, then I'll put my hands up and say, yeah, do you know what? He's actually a decent manager. But at the moment, I'm going by the fact that he done brilliantly at Morecambe and left them in, not limbo, but they left him. I think he left a bit of taste in Morecambe fans' mouth. So I'd be proving on said, yeah, I'm actually a decent coach. I can do it at Morecambe. I can do it at Bradford.
I will say the one thing that I don't really know what to expect here, I know you've touched on it a little bit, is what style we're going to see. Because Morecambe, I guess by just default with the players they had and the style they had and the budget they had, they were playing a bit more directly. They were playing on the counter attack more. At Plymouth, he had some good players. Obviously, Anthony Sarcevic was there back then, another person we've interviewed here, and he did really well in a good footballing team. And at Ross County, again, was a little bit more direct. So I think 2 out of 3 would suggest it is going to be direct, but it's going to be interesting to see what he goes for. As you've said, recruitment is absolutely key. But if he gets the fans on side, if recruitment goes well, we know it could go well. But do you think it will, Craig? Looking ahead to next season, you've got the 2 schools of thought of fresh manager, successful manager, recruitment going well, we could fly up the league. Or is that little drop off from a Bradford point of view towards the end of last season going to end up being costly because they finished absolutely woefully?
Yeah, it is a bit of both. Fans always going to be high on it anyway. When you see a new manager come in, they're going to be high on it. I think it depends on the first few signings. If he gets a few signings in, see who he brings in. If they're good and they can turn Bradford around, then yeah, you can start being optimistic and yeah, we're going to win this. We can easily do it. But it depends. I think for me, it depends. I think he has to get off to a good start. So I think he will. No, I actually don't. I think it's going to be quite a mixed bag. I think it's going to take time. Obviously, we know it's a long season. Look at Bolton, for example, under Ian Evatt. He had a shocking start, Ian Evatt, and they were near the bottom 6 at one point. And he got on that brilliant run at the start of 2021 and got him promoted. So it could be the same as that. Start slowly and get on that run and be up there in the top 3. So I don't know. I think, in my opinion, for Bradford, I think it should be at least the playoffs. I think if it goes wrong, I think he's going to start playing other people.
One of the things I would say is, as you just alluded to a minute ago, and I said it with Bolton last year, they will start awfully because there's going to be a massive overhaul of the squad. And there is going to be a fair amount of change on the pitch at Bradford City. And you have to give the manager time if you do that. And that comes from off the pitch because you have to accept it takes 10 to 15 games to bed in. I always use the example of when Luton won the conference under John Still. And the first 10 games, they were in the bottom half. Bolton last season, another brilliant example of that because they're having to overhaul the squad. And if the chairman, if the chief executive, if they don't give him time, it will end in disaster. I completely agree with you because it's not going to be a flying start by my book. However, I think they are going to give him time. And I think we're going to see something quite similar to Bolton last season. They are one of the bigger reputation sides in the league. If they get on a roll and they've got supporters behind them, I think they'll be flying. And they've given him a 3-year deal. They've got to commit. I don't think they can afford to sack him early on. So I think they'll have to stick with him by default. And I think he'll then take them up the lead. And I agree, he will finish in the top 7. But I don't know whereabouts. Do I go for 3rd or do I go for the playoffs? I'm going to say they're Nick 3rd, Craig. What about you? What's your final position?
Ideally, Bradford need to be in the top 10, as I just said. I think early on, and it's not a confirmed prediction, when I will get to that later in the summer, Bradford got to be in the top 10. I think they'll be 5th. I'll be honest, I think playoffs will be good enough for Bradford. Acceptable, should I say. Anything lower is not acceptable. And I don't think he'll get a sack after the year. I think he'll have another year, or at least another year onto it. But for the first year, I think playoffs, it's got to be playoffs for me.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, if we get to this point next year and they're in the League Two playoffs, there's no manager you'd want behind you than the one that won it last year. So that could turn out to be a good thing. We'll wait and see. But it's not important what me and you think, Craig Savage. It matters what the Bradford City fans think. So if you are here, get yourself down in the comments. Let us know what you think. If you enjoyed the episode, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Let us know your reaction to the Derek Adams appointment. Obviously, it's a little bit of a bittersweet moment, the way he left Morecambe and when. But for Bradford, you've got a proven manager. So you're looking forward to it. And do you think he's going to have a good season? Let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. There's plenty of League Two and other EFL clubs that have appointed new managers. And we're going to get round to all of those specials very soon. Thank you to Craig Savage for joining me as always. You can follow us on Twitter at HonestFootball3.